Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back here to speak to you this time about the future of well-being. And once again, thank you, Santiago, and your team for having me here. So this morning, I think I made the point that the essential nature of the universe is not material, it's consciousness. And that means that your mind is a projection of consciousness, as is your body, as is the physical universe. And they're all an integrated activity. It's very important to pay attention to these words. Your body, your mind, and the universe are an integrated activity in consciousness. When we say activity, it means something that is constantly in the field of change. So that includes your brain, it includes your genetic activity, which is the activity of the genes. It includes the activity of your mind and your body. So one way to think of this is that your body and your brain and your genes and your mind are a verb, not a noun. Okay, so if you really look at this seriously, you'll see that actually there are no nouns in the universe. No nouns. There are only verbs. Nouns are conventions of language, but they're not expressions of reality at any level of existence. Even this microphone is not a thing, because if you look at this microphone, it's made up of molecules, the molecules are made up of atoms, the atoms are activities of subatomic particles in the same emptiness from where the whole universe comes. So even this microphone is not a thing, it's an activity. But let's see how this applies to your body, because the future of well-being actually depends on looking at the integrated activity, which is body, mind, and universe in consciousness. So, your physical body is like, you might say, like a river, like what the Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said. He said, you cannot step into the same river twice. No man can step into the same river twice, because it's a new river and it's a new man. And just like you cannot step into the same river twice, the real you, the true self, which we will again address towards the end of this lecture, although we did discuss that in the morning, your true self cannot step into the same mind or into the same body twice. Even with one breath that you breathe in 10 to the power of 22 atoms that come to you from everywhere. They go to your heart cells, your kidney cells, your brain cells. With every breath that you breathe out 10 to the power of 22 atoms. And these atoms are coming from every single cell in your body. In fact, at the atomic level, you're literally breathing out bits and pieces of your heart and kidney and brain tissue. And technically speaking, we're all intimately sharing our organs with each other all the time. So the great American poet Walt Whitman once said, every atom that belongs to you as well belongs to me. You do not own your body in the way you own your automobile or your insurance policy. Because your body is actually an activity of all of life. In fact, in just the last 3 weeks, a quadrillion atoms, which is 10 followed by 15 zeros, have gone through your body, that have gone through the body of every other living species on this planet. So think of a tree in Africa, think of a peasant in China, think of a taxi driver in Calcutta, and you have molecules in your body that were circulating there only 3 weeks ago. Right this moment, you have in your physical body at least 1 million atoms that were once in the body of Jesus Christ. There's too much energy in this room. settle down. So, right this moment, you have in your physical body at least 1 million atoms that were one from the body of Jesus Christ, or Michelangelo, or anyone you want to think about. So, we replace 98% of all the atoms in our body in less than 1 year. This is a fact of biology. So the atomic level, you recycle your stomach lining every 5 days. You have a new skeleton every 3 months. New skin once a month. Your liver recycles every 6 weeks. And your DNA, which makes up your genes, recycles every 6 weeks. It's very interesting because we think of our genes as also nouns, as things. But your genes and your DNA is actually the memory of evolution. So, I don't know if you know this, but 65% of your DNA is the same as a banana. 84% of your DNA is the same as a mouse. 98.4 or 5% of your genes are the same as a monkey. And in fact, your entire body originally comes from bacterial DNA. So the genes are also activity, and they are the memories of evolution. The actual raw material of the DNA, which means carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, which is the raw material that makes up your genes, that recycles every 6 weeks, like migratory birds. So as I said, you recycle your entire body almost once a year, 98% of it. 2% in the cartilage, and some tissues recycles a little later. So this body, which I'm using right now to manufacture this lecture, is my year 2013 model. Last time I came to Buenos Aires, I brought the same suitcase but not the same body. Okay, because my suitcase is also an activity, it's not a noun, but it has a longer shelf life than my physical body. The point here to understand intellectually is that you cannot be your physical body. Because if you say, I am my physical body, then you have to qualify which one. Which one are you talking about? This year's model, last year's model, the childhood model, the puberty model. The body is just the recycling of all of life, actually. Because life recycles at every level, atomic, molecular, cellular, biological, at the level of organisms, and so on. So you cannot possibly be your body. Similarly, you cannot be your mind, because your mind is constantly the recycling of information, mostly. Of course, we all have original creative ideas. Very rarely do those ideas come from a single individual. Even the great theories of evolution and relativity and what we call the new understanding of cosmology, these are the recycling of ideas that occasionally take quantum leaps of creativity. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm transferring my ideas to your consciousness. My consciousness is transferring my ideas to your consciousness. And as I transfer these ideas, there are certain parts of your brain that get activated. Because there's no mental activity that does not activate the brain. So because these ideas are more, you might say, intellectual, your frontal cortex of the brain is getting activated, and that is activating different parts of your body. This causes a shift in biology. And I'm not speaking metaphorically, I'm speaking very literally as somebody who has a training and background in biology and neuroscience and neuroendocrinology. So given this, let's see how we can look at the future of well-being. I think the first thing to understand is, of course, that it is consciousness that is creating all of our reality, all of it. Our cognition, between our knowing, our perception, our social interactions, our environment, our biology, everything over here that I have listed, our behavior, our speech, our moods, our emotions are all simultaneously a projection of the state of consciousness we are in. So this morning I actually discussed with you 7 states of consciousness: sleep, dreams, waking state, soul consciousness, cosmic consciousness, divine or God consciousness, and ultimately unity consciousness. Each of these states of consciousness changes all these factors simultaneously, not one at a time. So as your consciousness shifts, your perception of the world and yourself shifts. Your cognition, your knowing shifts. Your personal relationships change. Your social interaction change. And the environment that you create for yourself also changes. Because reality is different in different states of consciousness. Cognition is different in different states of consciousness. Perception is different in different states of consciousness. Personal relationships and social interactions are different in different states of consciousness. And your very biology, the molecules of your body, are different in different states of consciousness. Therefore, the only way to improve our well-being is ultimately to shift in consciousness to a deeper level, from local to non-local. This morning I mentioned local is localized in space-time, and the ultimate non-local nature of our spirit is it is beyond space and time. So let's again take this to a very practical level. I will not go into this. This morning I discussed that most of the universe is unmanifest. But what we are seeing now is the emergence of a new paradigm, a new framework through which we can understand our biology and the nature of the universe. So let's start with here, genetic indeterminism. What does that mean? Well, in the year 2001, when President Clinton announced the completion of the Genome Project, it was the hope of many biologists and many people working that just because we knew the nature of our genes, we would be able to cure almost every disease, cancer and so on. But that did not happen. And that did not happen because even until the year 2001, we did not realize that genes are not material structures. Genes are activities in consciousness. Even today, a lot of people don't understand that. Genetic indeterminism simply means, and this is a well-known fact now from those who study genetics, some of the people I collaborate with at Harvard Medical School, the director of the genetic laboratory there, we now know that 95% of your genes and their activities are not fixed. 95%. There are 5% genes that seem to be fully penetrant, which means you can predict based on those genes what may happen in the future. Some people have, say, cardiomyopathy or certain type of leukemia or Down syndrome or certain kinds of Alzheimer's that are a result of what are called fully penetrant genes. But that's only 5%. And so 95% of your genes are indeterminate. Indeterminate means you may have a high risk for certain things like breast cancer or heart disease or cardiovascular illness or inflammation, or certain types of cancer, but you can change the activity of those genes by changing the activities of your consciousness, which we'll go into in a few moments. So 5% are fully penetrant, and those two in the future we'll see what are the cures for those 5%. But 95% of your genes do not determine your fate. Similarly, your brain is plastic. Your brain is plastic in that your brain is not a noun, it's an activity, and by changing the way you think, perceive, feel, you can change the activity of your brain. In fact, our brain has 3 aspects to it. This, as I make my hand like this is a handy model of the brain. This part of the brain is called the cortex, which is only 4 million years old. This responds to how we think, how we imagine, self-reflection, insight, intuition. When I open my hand, and inside where my thumb is, that's the limbic brain that responds to emotions. And then there's the reptilian brain that responds to threat. By changing internal processes, thinking, feeling, and behavior, we change the anatomy of the brain. That is what neuroplasticity means. And this can be documented through scans, through what are called PET scans, positron emission tomography, CAT scans. It can be documented that you can change your brain. This was the subject of my last book, Super Brain. We'll go through certain processes, we'll see how that changes. The third thing, it says reversal of aging biomarkers. The way biologists study the aging process is not by how you look, but by biological markers of aging, such as blood pressure, bone density, body temperature regulation, hormone levels, eyesight, hearing thresholds, immune function, endocrine functions, skin thickness, the number of wrinkles, all these, amount of fat in the body, cholesterol, HDL ratio, muscle strength, muscle mass, sugar tolerance, the incidence of diabetes. These are the ways to measure biological aging. And today we know that to a great extent, there can be reversal of the biological markers of aging. I'll also share with you how that happens. But right now in our center, we are working with University of California in San Francisco, University of California in San Diego, and Harvard Medical School to see how we can reverse the biological markers of aging. So in our center, we study the biological markers of aging. We study an enzyme called telomerase, which controls the length of telomeres in your chromosomes, which determines your biological clock. And we can see that even within a week of meditation, we do a meditation called primordial sound meditation. We have some instructors here today. They'll be outside when I sign the books. But we have instructors in primordial sound meditation here. We can see increase in telomerase, the length of telomeres, and a shift in the biological markers, just by meditation. But there are other things that will also change your biological markers, including how you perceive your body. Do you perceive it as a structure, or do you perceive it as energy and information? There are other things that you can do, including diet, including mind-body coordination, breathing techniques, shifting your emotions to love, compassion, empathy, joy, equanimity, emotions that connect us, that all influence the biological markers of aging. So what we're seeing is a new era in medicine. That's why I call this the future of well-being, which is called quantum biology. What does quantum biology mean? Every cell in your body is like a quantum computer. Most computers are linear. Okay? We do not have quantum computers right now. They'll come in the next decade or so. A quantum computer is something that can do many millions of activities simultaneously. Not one at a time, simultaneously, and connect them to other activities elsewhere. And that's what your body is. It's a quantum computer that mirrors the activity of the universe at every level. Okay, so as I mentioned in the morning, your body has 100 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Every cell is performing 100,000 activities every second, and every cell is tracking and correlating its activity with every other cell. That's what we mean by quantum biology, and there are many new papers in scientific journals on quantum biology based on what is called quantum entanglement. Entanglement means at the most fundamental level of existence, space-time, energy, information, matter, mind, biology is all inseparable. Not interconnected, inseparable. It's one. So that's quantum entanglement. Non-locality means that your real nature is you cannot be localized in space-time. Your spirit cannot be localized in space-time. It's eternal, it's beyond space-time, it's not subject to birth and death. And this resolves many of the problems that scientists had in the last century, which without going into details, they said measurement problem, wave-particle duality, observer effect. And these all refer to the essential levels of nature where you say, is the nature like a particle or it's like a wave? And the answer is it's neither. It's pure potential that behaves as a wave or a particle depending on how you do the experiment. Your essential nature is pure potentiality. Your essential nature is choice making, and your essential nature is creativity. And what we call biological healing is actually biological creativity. Because this morning I mentioned that the laws of nature are just what we call the regularities of nature. But regularities are habits of nature. If nature is in its fundamental state, consciousness, then consciousness is creative, and even evolution is punctuated by leaps of creativity. So, we used to think in materialistic biology that the heart is like a pump. Of course it is, it pumps, but it's also an organ of intelligence and emotion. So your heart makes the same neuropeptides that your brain makes. And once again, your sympathetic nervous system, which is always on guard because it feels afraid, it wants to control things, and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the balance to that, which is flow, they are constantly regulating your heart rate variability, your neuroendocrine axis, which means the hormones in your body, the neurotransmitters over here, and these all correlate with the images and thoughts and the feelings and emotions and sensations in consciousness. This is one single activity. And this activity can be monitored today. You don't have to believe this just because I'm telling you. Okay, right now I'm wearing a watch. This is monitoring everything right now in my body right now, including my heart rate variability, my skin temperature, my metabolic rate, my energy expenditure. All of that is being monitored by this watch. And I can stick it into a USB in my computer and I can see the data. I'm wearing other devices here. As you can see, I'm all wired up because this is the area that I'm interested in, to say that we are not just making this up. Here's another device that is monitoring through Bluetooth on my computer everything that is happening in my body right now. Okay, so I don't know if you've heard of Arianna Huffington, the Huffington Post. We have just collaborated on something that we call GPS of the soul. Okay, so basically this GPS of the soul monitors everything because it also has a GPS device, so it knows when you were in so-and-so, you had an argument, or you have a hangover, or you got upset, or you didn't sleep well, it'll all be there, all this, and your computer is monitoring all this, and these biosensors give us the ability to actually change and shift in consciousness. So we shift in all these different aspects of what we call reality. Of course, it's not reality, it's a projection of reality. So now let's bring this to a very more interesting practical level. And here's this is a slide from Scientific American. What happens when you feel love? And this can be romantic love, or it can be love for your parents, or for your children, or for your colleagues, or for God. And it changes your brain in a very profound way, where disparate parts of your brain get correlated. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you 5 areas of well-being that are being scientifically studied through the Gallup organization. Okay, so Gallup is, you probably have heard of Gallup. Most people know them for the way they do polls. I'm a senior scientist at Gallup, and I advise Gallup and participate with them on measuring the well-being of individuals, of communities, of businesses, and of nations. So I'm sure you're curious about Argentina. Argentina is number 16 in well-being in the world, which is not bad, considering that the United States is number 13. Number 1 is Denmark. Number 2 is Canada. Costa Rica is number 3 or number 4, something like this. And I'll tell you how we monitor well-being. And this is pretty accurate. And a lot of it is subjective, but of course I mentioned these biosensors, which will be the next step to objectively validate what we know. Okay, so we monitor well-being right now in 5 areas: career well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, community well-being, and financial well-being. And we find that they're all interrelated because all these areas are also dependent on our state of consciousness. So, career well-being. Are you happy with what you do every day? Do you like your job? And when we asked this question at Gallup, as I mentioned, I work with Gallup, we found only 20% of people in the world, they say they love their job. Only 20%. More people die in our civilization on Monday morning at 9 o'clock than any other time, and mostly of heart attacks. This is a very extraordinary accomplishment for which only the human species can take credit, because no other animal knows the difference between Monday and Tuesday. It's an idea. So when we ask people, only 20% say yes. This is what we ask. This is how we do the survey, okay? We say, on a scale of 1 to 10, can you say, I like what I do every day? So 1 would be, I hate what I do every day. And 10 is, I love, I couldn't be happier. Then you scale yourself from 1 to 10. If you score over 7, you are thriving. If you score between 4 and 7, you are struggling. If you score less than 4, you are suffering. Okay, so we do these questions, and these are well worked out questions. You know, Gallup has perfected the technique of doing questions for the last 100 years. So, at work, do you get to use your strengths to do what you do best every day? Are you in dharma, as we say? Do I use my strengths? And if, again, you score the same way, 1 through 10, if you score less than 4, you are suffering. 4 to 7, you're struggling. And 7 and above, you're thriving. Is there someone at work who encourages your development? Is somebody who actually notices your strengths? At work, do your opinions seem to count or not? Can you see that this is all happening in consciousness? Okay? And so as I said, if you score more than 7, you're thriving. If you score between 4 and 7, you're struggling. If you score less than 4, you're suffering. What do we find? By the way, Argentina, 53% of the country, people are thriving. It's a very good score, to tell you the truth, despite what you hear in the news about your country, or what you assess your country to be. It's a good score. 53% are thriving, 43% are struggling, only 4% are suffering in this country. If you go to Togo, or if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, you'll see the reverse. 1% of people are thriving. Okay, 1% of people. If you go to Somalia, 2% of people are thriving. If you go to various parts of Sudan, Afghanistan, see, you are not recognizing how lucky you are because you don't see what else is happening in the world, where 50% of the world lives on less than $2 a day, and 20% of the world lives on less than $1 a day, where the life expectancy is very short, where child mortality is very high. In any case, this is how we do career well-being, and then we actually help people to find jobs where they can maximize their strengths and work with other people who complement their strengths. Research is H stands for happiness, is equal to S. S stands for set point in the brain, and I'll explain to you what that is. The set point in your brain determines 50% of your daily happiness experience. So H is equal to S plus C. C means conditions of living, money. That contributes about 12 to 14% of your daily happiness experience. And then the last part is V. V is voluntary choices that we make every day. That is about close to 36 to 40% of your daily happiness experience. Now all this has been studied, okay, through social science. So let's go to the formula. Is H is equal to S plus C plus V. What's the set point? Set point is that your neural networks in your brain determine your perception of situations. So people who are unhappy, whenever they look at any situation, their brain interprets it for them as a problem. So they complain, they condemn, they criticize, or they play the victim. How is this determined? So this creates obviously unhappiness. There are other people, and there are not a lot of people, who will look at the same situation as the unhappy person, but they'll find a creative opportunity. Instead of saying, what's the problem? They ask themselves, what is the opportunity? This is the set point. So you say, how is the set point determined? Is it genetic? Is it in our genes? The answer is, first of all, as you know, I mentioned earlier, that genes are indeterminate. They do not determine everything. The genes are activities in your consciousness. So, what determines the set point? It turns out it's conditioning in childhood. If your parents always complained, if they always criticized, if they were always condemning, if they were always playing the victim, then you learn that, and your neurons, the neurons in your brain, they mirror the neurons of your parents. That's how we learn language, but that's how we also learn emotions. And so you have a very low set point for happiness. So when we learn this, we say, this is not really good news. Because your happiness is not determined by you, it's determined by your childhood, your upbringing. And that is true, it is determined by your childhood and your upbringing. Can we change the set point? Can we change the set point? And the answer is, if you understand genetic indeterminism and neuroplasticity, you can change the set point. The first way to change the set point is to question your own thinking. So you say, is this a problem? Why do I think it's a problem? How did I get the idea that it's a problem? Am I 100% sure that this is a problem? Could this be an opportunity? Is there another way of looking at this situation? Would somebody else find an opportunity? What is the opposite of this idea? Who would I be if I did not think this is a problem? So, as you see, there is no positive thinking. It's a question of self-reflection, which is a spiritual awareness that you're questioning the hypnosis of your conditioning. And the more you question the hypnosis of your social conditioning, the more your neural networks will shift, because your neural networks are in fact determined by your consciousness. And it's not positive thinking, because positive thinking can be stressful. You have to think positively all the time. It's like you have to breathe consciously all the time, you cannot do it. But reflective self-examination, reflective self-awareness, which is what spirituality is, will change your set point. The other way that the set point is changed is through meditation. So today we've been talking about meditation. We've been learning about meditation. There are many kinds of meditation: reflective meditation, self-awareness meditation, transcendence, which going beyond subject-object split, questioning your perceptual reality, and there are all these different types of meditation, including mantra meditation, will change your set point. So, which means that your set point is totally determined by you, once you understand. Let's come to the second part of the happiness formula, conditions of living. Do conditions of living determine your happiness? And the answer is, of course, yes. If you're extremely poor, you'll be unhealthy because it causes a lot of stress. But does being extremely rich make you necessarily happier? And the answer is, it depends how you look at money. Okay, so if your identity is your money, then it doesn't make you happier. It may be a source of stress to you. In fact, there are now very good research data that we have that shows if you win the lottery, you will be very happy in the beginning. In 6 months, you'll plateau, and at the end of 1 year, you will go back to your set point. So, the amount of money does not necessarily make you happier. It's how you identify with it. Of course, if you are very poor, as I said, it will cause stress, and stress will increase unhappiness. The first choice is for personal pleasure. So choices for personal pleasure include shopping, which is the number one choice that people make for personal pleasure, at least in the United States. Shopping, entertainment, alcohol, sex, food. These are the choices we make for personal pleasure. Do these choices make us happy? And the answer is yes, they do. But the happiness is transient. It lasts for a few hours, at the most for a few days, and then unless you repeat that choice, it does not feel fulfilled. So you repeat it, and you repeat it, and you repeat it, till you get addicted to what you don't want anymore. Because pleasure has a way of exhausting its energy. So this does not mean pleasure is not good. It means pleasure selectively experienced makes you happy, but if it is the only reason for creating happiness, then pleasure exhausts its own energy by making somebody else happy. And this changes your neurotransmitters, dopamine, opiates, serotonin, oxytocin, all your brain shifts when you make somebody else happy. Okay? So of course these days you can make somebody happy by sending them a kiss or a hug through an emoticon, or on Twitter or on Facebook. And we are actually now seeing the emergence of a global brain, which I'll talk to you, through information technologies that give us the ability to actually create a healthier and happier world. Let's go back to my slide. ChopraFoundation.org, check it out. I also have a Twitter and Facebook in Spanish, but the person who manages my social media is here. Her name is Claudia Luna. She's somewhere in the audience. If you're there, you can stand up. And you can connect with her, but also Carolyn, who is working with Santiago. We can all connect on social networks so we can create a global brain. And Spanish is actually the most, after English, it is the second most common language, but in the year 220, in the US, it will be the #1 language. Okay, so it's quickly taking over the global brain. I want to show you a video on the global brain, and Maria, Jose, will you please translate, because I don't think we have subtitles for this. And then I will end shortly after that. Can we see the slide? All these videos, by the way, are available, all the videos that I showed and more are available on youtube.com/the Chopra Well. youtube.com/the Chopra Well. Many more, but let's look at this one. There's a fascinating connection between social networks and how the human brain is evolving. For a long time, neuroscience held a wrong belief, several actually, about the human brain. The number of brain cells we have was seen as a fixed number that declined over time. No one realized that stem cells in the brain can renew lost neurons at any time in life. But the most exciting discovery was that everyday experience rewires the brain. Even though it looks like a fixed thing, your brain is actually a process, an activity. I like to say your brain is not a noun, but a verb. It is in a constant state of dynamic flux. New connections and new cells are being born, and as the rewiring occurs, something astonishing happens. The brain processes reality, and when new pathways are formed, the world becomes different. Millions of tweets, texts, emails, and phone calls have one thing in common. They are neural signals in the global brain. Social networks have the capacity to swiftly alter the global brain. On the surface, most tweets are small, fleeting events, but stand back a bit, and you see that a new identity is being formed. A global we that anyone can participate in is being shaped. The newly shaped global brain can topple the traditional barriers of religion, tribalism, nationalism, and political oppression. Before the social networks, think of what it took to escape the mindset of a repressed culture. You had to physically move away, plant yourself in a foreign country, and probably continue to fear for your relatives stuck back home. Now, in the darkest hours of civil resistance, anyone can send and receive messages from the global brain. What I'm saying isn't mystical or hypothetical. The destiny of the whole planet depends on reaching beyond the narrow interests of rich nations and multinational corporations. A community of humanity needs to be formed. It's completely possible for that to happen. And in fragile, hopeful ways, it already has. So there you are. It's time for us to It's time for us to take ownership of our true identity, because together, and that's why I want to congratulate you, Santiago, for this beautiful foundation that you have started. Together, we can help create a critical mass, a tipping point, so that we can actually move in the direction of a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and happier world. Thank you. We can say today, scientifically, that all of manifest existence is what we call a discontinuity. What does discontinuity mean? It means even though the experience of the world is one of continuity, actually nothing is continuous. It's all an activity. I mentioned that. A verb, not a noun. Okay, so at the most fundamental levels of nature, you have subatomic activity. So subatomic particles go on and off. That's what we call a discontinuity. Particles of light that hit our eyes go on and off. Nature is a vibration that goes on and off all the time. That's what is referred to as a discontinuity. Our perceptual experience of the world, which means how we experience the world through our five senses, is one of continuity, but that's an illusion. So when you go to see a movie is a series of still frames. If you move it fast enough, of course these days we have digital movies, but it's the same thing. The digital movies are on-off, but your eyes cannot sense the on-off fast enough. So your consciousness creates continuity, but actually a movie is a series of still frames that's going on and off. When you see a Christmas light going around a Christmas tree, there's no light actually traveling around the Christmas tree. Only light bulbs are going on and off around the Christmas tree, but they're going in a sequence, and your consciousness creates the illusion of continuity. Or when you see an image on your television screen moving from here to here, an automobile moves from here to here, actually no image travels from here to here, only photons and electrons go on and off in a certain pattern, and in your consciousness you create the image of an automobile moving from here to here. This is what is called a discontinuity. Everybody get it? It means it goes on, it goes off. You can't have an on without an off. You can't have an off without an on. And this is how the universe operates, every level. So subatomic particles are going on and off. The cells in your body are going on and off right now. I said your stomach lining changes every 5 days. So the stomach cells that you have on right now are not the stomach cells that were on 5 days ago. Okay. So at the level of cells, your cells are dying and they're being born. Photons are dying and they're being born. Electrons are dying and they're being born. Molecules are dying, they're being reborn. Organs, tissues, the whole universe. If I could see the whole universe, it would be a huge electromagnetic storm that's going on and off at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second. So there cannot be an off without an on. There cannot be an on without an off. Ancient sages said that. The Greek or Egyptian philosopher Hermes Trismegistus, he spoke of the universe being a vibration. Everything is a vibration. It's a vibration of energy. But you are not the vibration, you are in the space between the vibration. Remember, in the discontinuity. So you are in the discontinuity and you interpret the on as birth and the off as death. And this happens at every level. But the off is not a state of vibration, it is the rest between the vibration. That is the field of potentiality, that's a field of creativity, that's a field of correlation, that's a field of intentionality. That's the true self, vibrating as this mind, this body, this universe.